Welcome to the CAA 2021 webinar series. Today's webinar is High Performance CPR, an Insider's Story, presented by Mike Helbock and proudly supported by Lierdal. Thanks for joining us and we hope you enjoy.
Hi, my name is David Waters and I'm the Chief Executive of the Council of Ambulance Authorities. Welcome to the latest in our webinar series. Today's webinar is titled High Performance CPR, an Insider's Story. Evidence indicates that high quality CPR compressions combined with minimal interruptions has a significant impact on patient outcomes. High performance CPR consists of mastery level, high quality chest compressions, measured performance matrix, including rate, recoil and depth, controlled ventilations, and high compression fractions. Equally important is the integration of close coordination and communication within the high performance CPR team. In this webinar, we will hear from Mike Helbock as he shares his high performance CPR experience and insights into how you can create, educate, and train high performance CPR teams in the resuscitation of cardiac arrest victims through the use of performance measurement and feedback. Mike's role with the Seattle King County Resuscitation Academy is as a specialist in the development and training of the high performance CPR program. Mike worked for 25 years as a firefighter and senior paramedic for the City of Bellevue Fire Department in Washington until his promotion to Divisional Chief of EMS Training and Education of the Seattle King County EMS Service. Mike completed paramedic training at Harborview Medical Center and University of Washington in the School of Medicine, graduating with first-in-class honors. Mike has served as the senior instructor for the Training and Education Division of the Seattle King County EMS Service for more than 25 years. By way of his highly acclaimed training style and diverse training experience, he has received speaking invitations from many of the nation's largest EMS conferences and EMS agencies across the United States, Canada, and abroad, including Europe and here in Australia and in New Zealand. Mike is one of a handful of nationally recognized speakers and has delivered the keynote address at numerous EMS conferences around the globe. As a national and international speaker, Mike has shared his experiences in pre-hospital medicine to more than 250,000 students over the past 30 years. Mike Helbock shares many of his training concepts with other instructors across the country and also authors and produces his entire curriculum. He continually evaluates his performance as an educator and develops new and innovative ways to educate students in emergency medicine and evaluates how the students apply this knowledge to field performance. Please join me in welcoming Mike Helbock. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Helbock from Seattle King County, part of the Resuscitation Academy. I'm going to share a story with you today called High Performance CPR, an insider's story or an insider's look. I'll share with you the development of the program, share with you our successes, and help you better understand how you can incorporate this program in your community. So a little about me. I've spent my career in the fire service here in the Seattle King County system. After more than 20 plus years, I retired and moved on to a division chief's position with Seattle King County Medic 1, and I'm current faculty of the Resuscitation Academy in Seattle. I try to stay very busy with other programs around the world, and frankly, everybody, it's a real pleasure to be able to share this program with you today. All right, let's get into this. I want you to do something if you're with me. If you have a smartphone or a tablet with a camera on it, go ahead and roll that over the QR code on the left side of your screen, and that'll take you to a website called resuscitationacademy.org. In the Resuscitation Academy, this is the team of physicians and senior trainers and paramedics and dispatchers and police officers that help develop curriculum for EMS education and survival from cardiac arrest. And on the right-hand side is an ebook that's within this website. The website itself is free. All we ask is that you sign in so we can know who you are and where you're from, and that everything behind that sign-in is free. This is an incredible ebook on the right side of your screen called The Art and Science of Resuscitation. And I really encourage you to take a look at it, download it, and see what it does to help you. Okay, my plan today is to try to encourage, to help you build a culture that where everybody that are in VF and PVT survive, specifically those two, but of course, all cardiac arrest, but specifically those two. And why? Because these two rhythms are absolutely survivable rhythms. And I want to encourage this culture that when you go on the next cardiac arrest, that you expect a change. You expect the patient to get better. And I'll work today to try to share that culture with you and hope that I can inspire you to do the same. So what's going to happen for the next 30 minutes? Well, quite frankly, everyone, I'm going to take you on a journey. And a journey is going to be from where we know and what we know works today. What we know really works for sure. I'll certainly then spend time on the definition of high-performance CPR. From our point of view, I'll share all these aspects with you. We're definitely going to get into some of the science that help guide our way, as well as we'll discuss the metrics of high-performance CPR and how you can actually identify these and work toward perfection in your agency. And then lastly, we'll close with a few closing remarks. And then I think at that point, we'll have an open Q&A to be able to ask some questions. So with that, let's get started. So the real first question I want to ask the audience, all of you right now, is what do we know for sure? When it comes to survival from cardiac arrest, what do we know for sure? Well, quite frankly, everybody, the list is pretty short. And in fact, here it is. What we know for sure that helps and makes a difference in survival from cardiac arrest is early, high quality chest compressions. And the better the quality, the better. And if need be, early defibrillation. We know these two absolutely make a difference. So as we move through this whole process, I want you to remember these two things. In fact, it's in fact supported, not just by the Australian Resuscitation Council and New Zealand Council, but as well as the 2020 guidelines in the American Heart Association that shares that early or immediate chest compressions can double, if not even triple, a victim's chance for survival. But look at the next part. High performance CPR coupled with early defibrillation, like in the early 3 to 5 minutes of a cardiac arrest, can actually achieve survival rates as high as 50, if not even mid 70s. And frankly, everyone, this is being done around the world. The survival rates we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years for those agencies that incorporate this high performance system of cardiac arrest management are seeing incredible survival rates using Utstein criteria. All right, so the question I have for the audience now is you got to ask yourself, what is high performance CPR? How do you define it? Well, as you know, there's lots of different terms that are out there between pit crew and high quality, and certainly now with high performance. Allow me to share with you how we see this and let you make your own decision on that. So what is high performance CPR? Well, here's a definition. And I know you're seeing this on the right side and you're thinking, boy, Mike, that's a lot of words in a slide. Well, let's do this together. A highly refined, high performance CPR is a highly refined, choreographed and measured CPR event that's built around mastery level individual skills with fully integrated ALS procedures, incorporating current evidence-based performance metrics. I agree, it's a mouthful, but if you look at each one of these pieces individually, it makes perfect sense. High performance CPR is not just one piece or another. It's a complete concept. It's a culture that allows you to look at all aspects of a cardiac arrest management and refine it as need be in your agency. So one of the things that a lot of folks ask me, well, Mike, what's the difference between like pit crew and high performance? And here's what I'll say to everybody right now. Anything that you're doing that increases the chances of likelihood of survival from cardiac arrest, I applaud. Absolutely. And certainly high performance, in my opinion, is both qualitative and quantitative. And let me share the qualitative sides early, which, by the way, is very similar to like pit crew or high quality CPR or things that are maybe some of the other verbiage out there. There's no doubt that it's a choreographed evolution. And we can look at these bullet points: minimal interruptions, efficiency in rotation, calm, concise communication, interchangeable positions, predefined positions, the use of a team lead or even a checklist. Those are all qualitative aspects, which are absolutely in line with other programs you may have heard around. But here is where I believe high performance CPR separates itself. And I want to really encourage you to think about this. Everything about a high performance evolution is a measured performance. It's measured both in training to get there and then actual field analytics to decide how you did. For example, high compression fractions. We'll talk about compression fractions in a slide coming up. But high compression fractions, mastery level individual skills, using an acronym that I developed many years ago called DVDR, and I'll explain that to you in a few slides. Complete integration of skills, both timed and measured against benchmarks within your organization, and complete scene coordination and rotation, again, timed and measured against benchmarks in your department. So the quantitative aspects really puts this in front of other programs, and we'll break all these down for you as we move forward. So there's 2 points that I really want to drive home today. If you write these down or remember these, then I've done a good job here today. There's 2 points that you absolutely must do in order to be a high-performance CPR performer in your organization. The first one is to learn to manage the seconds of a cardiac arrest. Now you're saying seconds. Mike, we run our durations in 20 or 25 minutes, or maybe even 30 minutes. I understand that. That's the duration of an arrest. I want you to pull back and look at the seconds of an arrest, because seconds matter, quite frankly. And in order to manage the seconds, you know what it takes? It simply takes the ability to eliminate unnecessary pauses. I'll look you right in the camera and say, if you're a field provider, even in hospital, you and I both know that we pause for many different reasons. Some we can't fix. There are some reasons to pause, and I understand that. But there are numerous reasons why we're taking a pause, and it's not necessary. It's completely unnecessary. I want you to think about that. Learn to manage the seconds, and I'll give you a little information moving forward to help support that. The next thing I ask that you do is to learn to master performance through both measurement and improvement. I want to show you something on the bottom of your screen. The first one is on the left. This is a tracing from a CPR mannequin, a Laerdal product, that gives you training analytics. At the end of a training session, it gives you all of the metrics of high-performance CPR: compression, rate, ventilation, volume of ventilation, decompression, and so on. That's on your left. The right side is an actual field tracing from an actual cardiac event. It's from Physio-Controller Stryker, and it's called CodeStat. These are the post-case or the post analytics that you get from a real case. But here's the point I want to make on this slide. You cannot expect a high-performing system that on the graph on the right unless you're actually training with the graph on the left. You can't expect high performance in the field if you never train and have training analytics to tell us where we've done things right or tell you where you've done things wrong. So I really encourage that. All right, let's talk about the science. The science is actually something that just intrigues me, but more importantly, I want to help you, which is what we had to do too, figure out how to operationalize the science. Today, more than any time, I believe the science is pretty clear where we need to go. So our job as educators, providers, and leadership is to operationalize the science and put it into play. Let me give some examples. When we first developed the program, we had to ask all 4,000 providers in the Seattle-King County region to open your minds and relearn how we're doing business. And we absolutely needed to embrace the meaning and value of measure and improve. And I'll leave that on the screen for you just a few more seconds. Measure and improve. And I'll close today with a quote. We use the same thing: measure and improve. Okay. Well, I hope I'm moving at a speed that keeps everybody engaged, but I want to slow down just a second so we can drill into something very important, a term as well as a concept, and it's called compression fraction. Now, you may have heard this term before, whether maybe it's called flow time, or you've heard compression density. They're all sort of terms that mean the same, but let me explain it. Compression fraction, by definition anyway, is the measurement of compressions in proportion to the overall CPR event. Okay, so I'll share with you, in our community, we look toward a compression fraction of at least 90% with a 30-to-2 compression ventilation ratio and 95% compression fraction if they move towards a continuous compression scenario, either with an advanced airway or manual defibrillation. So let's break this down. Let's show you, how do you achieve 90%? Now, some of you may have already said, Mike, we do this in our organization. We're already there. I applaud you for that. Thank you for that hard work. Some of you also are saying, Mike, we've also been tested on this and we're not there yet. Well, that just means we've got work to do. But again, I applaud you. But I think there's a third group out there. I think there's a group out there that says, Mike, I have no idea what our compression fraction is. We don't measure it. I don't know how to get it. I've never heard about it. You're the group I want to talk about. Let me give an example of how you would achieve a 90% compression fraction in a given period of time. In this case, just a 2-minute run. In other words, rotate every 2 minutes. How do we achieve 90% compression fraction in 2 minutes? Here's how. You've got to do 108 seconds of compressions. You can only pause for a total of 12 seconds within that 2 minutes. Again, some of you are saying, piece of cake. We do this all the time. And I, again, applaud you. Others are saying, Mike, we use an AED and we haven't talked about this. We've never known about compression fraction. And quite frankly, I'll tell you that your numbers are probably much less than this. It's a benchmark, and I really want to entice you to look into this, okay? So the next question, certainly that most of you must ask is, because compression fraction really is just about pauses, right? So the question is a few pauses here and there really make a big difference? Well, specifically, I think you should be able to say, a pause is just a pause, right? How long do you think it takes to get a pause back? Well, here's a hint, everybody. A 2 or 3 or 4 second pause, how long does it take to get it back? It's longer than you think. Here's why. If you look at this graph, on the x-axis, it's time. You can see this, it's in seconds and time. And the y-axis, of course, is pressure that is performed while you have chest compressions. The blue are right atrial pressure that goes up during compression, which is CPR systole, and then falls back down to the baseline during CPR diastole. The yellow line is aortic pressure. You can see that it gradually builds, but it doesn't fall quite as far or as fast as right atrial pressure during decompression. But here's what I want you to see. It takes about 16 seconds to get in 30 compressions. And if you're during 30 to 2, at the end of that 16 seconds, you pause to do a ventilation. And right here, look what happens when you pause. Everything goes back to 0. Right atrial pressure plummets to 0 right away, followed slowly by aortic pressure, but eventually it all goes back to 0. So here, everybody, is what I want you to remember. A 3 to 4 second pause is not benign. And in fact, a 3 to 4 second pause is about a 20-second pause in quality perfusion. And in fact, there are some studies that suggest these 3 to 4 second pauses happen, and sometimes we can get away with that. But the real egregious pause are these longer pauses, 15, 20 seconds, 25 seconds. And you and I both know, if you're a practitioner, you've been a part of those in your career as well. So the bottom line, pauses count, and your performance counts. Everything you do when you bring your hand near the chest of that patient counts. And that's really where I'm trying to go with all this. So some of you may ask, how do you know this? I mean, where do you get this information? Well, in our region, certainly there is a worldwide science on this, but in our region, we track every quantitative aspect of a resuscitation. Get this, to include audio. Yes, we listen to every single word that's said on a cardiac arrest. Some of you may be eyebrow raising right now. We listen to every single word. Why? Is because sometimes it helps explain things that when we get on the readout, doesn't make sense, like a long pause or something, and we can hear them say we're moving the patient from between the toilet and the bathtub out into the living room to do a better arrest. So it helps us understand the entirety of the call. But in fact, you know what I thought I'd do? I'm going to take you on a little trip, and I'm going to take you into what we call our tape room. And the tape room is where we acquire all of these data. It comes in as a chip now, not a tape anymore, but we listen to every case where we'll then review it for compliance and for quality. We'll annotate it as need be to give direction, and then we loop it back to the very providers who were on that call so they can understand how they did. Here is an actual case, and I thought I'd let you see and hear what we go through. 68 male found by wife unconscious and pulseless with agonal breathing. Classic cardiac arrest. Initial response, paramedics en route, but the EMTs got there first using a life pack in AED mode. Everybody, listen and watch. Here's the case.
That's connected. Going to analyze the rhythm.
The green are the actions of the
Okay, go ahead and
EMT.
stop to analyze.
The black is the underlying rhythm of the patient.
Okay, shot advised.
Analyze and charge.
During shot.
Compressions during the charge function.
Clear the patient, shocking. First shock delivered.
3 seconds. Very shock pause.
Okay. We're doing continuous compression.
So the lead EMT or the paramedic that get on scene will actually speak openly into the defibrillator or AED, sharing their updates, letting them, either the physician or the physician designee, whoever reviews this tape like we're doing right now, understand exactly what's going on. So it helps us really get a complete picture of the evolution of the cardiac arrest. All right, so you can see some of the bullet points. I want to continue to move on so we make sure we're getting our class here and get my computer moving on the right place. I want to share with you that one of the first years that we put together high performance CPR, we had an immediate increase in survival by 13%. And I'll say that by not adding any new equipment, no additional personnel, and no new drugs. All we did was change the culture of how we performed resuscitation. Now, those 13%, we were using Utstein criteria, which I'm sure you're aware, shockable rhythm, witness shockable rhythm, okay? Within the next 2 to 3 years, we actually increased our survival to well over 50%. In fact, the highest we hit was 62% using Utstein criteria, again, for VF, PVT patients or shockable patients in the Seattle-King County region. So I want to recommend, as we move forward, continue to move towards a high performance response to cardiac arrest in your system. And I'm going to share with you some of those key points as we do this over the next few minutes. The one thing you're going to need to learn to do is to eliminate those unnecessary pauses. As I shared with you already, you've got to eliminate any pause that shouldn't be part of the evolution. You've got to get rid of it. And quite frankly, you can. Once you actually go into a cardiac arrest, when you start to watch and educate and train, you're going to see complete pauses in there that don't need to be part of the resuscitation. Eliminate them, get rid of them. I'll give you a really good example of what the first thing we did of eliminating pauses. If you can remember, many years ago, you may have heard something called "I'm clear, you're clear, everybody's clear," just before defibrillatory shock was offered. And we all pulled back and pulled our arms back. We got away from the patient. We offered the shock, and then we scooted back up and got going. That was a 5 to 7 second pause in our system. So we eliminated it and came up with this idea of hover. Hover is putting your hands directly over the chest, 2 to 3 inches, right off the top. We clear the patient, everybody hover, shock, get back on the chest. That saved us 5 to 7 seconds every single time we offered defibrillatory shock. That's one example. Here's another example. Our paramedics, many, many years ago, what they come in with the EMTs with an AED, put on their manual defibrillator. In this case, it's a LifePak 15, but whatever device you use, and they put the paddles on. It's in manual mode, and they'd say, "Stop CPR, take a look at the rhythm." And if it was a shockable rhythm, they would say, "Let's charge." They would charge it up, and at that point, they'd say, "Clear," and away they went. Now, if you're a new medic, you're going, "What? What do you mean they were pausing during that?" The answer is yes. Many years ago, we didn't appreciate this idea of compression fraction, or certainly a pre-shock pause. So we just would watch them do it. Well, now we identified about 15 years ago something called pre-charge. During the compressions, in the last 15 seconds of the evolution, or what I call a buck 45, the paramedic will reach over, charge the device with compressions ongoing, read it, decide and go ahead and pause, rotate, decide if it's shockable, shock it. And if it's not, any button, dump the charge. I thought I'd share a video for you. It's right here.
Compulsory CPR. 15 seconds left in the cycle.
Compressions ongoing. Pre-charge the device during compressions.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
2 minutes. Rotate. Next compression. Hover. Quick look.
Yeah, we're going to shock it.
Shockable, back on the chest. That was a game changer for us as far as increasing compression fraction and the elimination of that pre-shock pause. I want you to really think about this. Certainly, I've read your guidelines in your region, and it absolutely suggests this pre-shock pause early, and I applaud that. Good for you. All right, let's keep going. I want you to continue to work toward building mastery level individual skills coupled with a complete team approach. I've shared when I do this class that everyone who comes near this patient in cardiac arrest brings value to the call. They bring value. So integrate all these different skills. There are different levels of education and performance. Integrate these skills in. One of the things we did early was to identify that all the initial providers, in this case, BLS providers, they own the compression and the ventilation portion of high performance. Because in the old days, before we developed this, when the paramedics would walk in, the EMTs would stop and ask them, what would you like us to do? Well, get back on the chest and start compressions. We understood that what we were doing was we weren't giving the value to those EMTs. So we gave the ownership of compression and ventilation to the EMTs. That is their run. And I will say with all respect, my colleagues from Ambulance Victoria came up with this one. I'm giving you all the credit. You stole this at a resuscitation academy. I heard if the EMTs and the BLS, if they own compressions, ALS own ROSC. I'm giving you all the credit right there. I love that idea. Certainly on the ALS would be paramedics or nurses or maybe RTs or even physicians. Let those initial providers run the compression and the ventilation piece. You own the ROSC or advanced technology or advanced airway intervention or whatever else that may be. But it's a team approach. All skills are done during compressions.
8-9 bag. 8-9 bag.
Tubes past the cords.
8-9 bag.
Okay, Mario.
Perfect. I think that point's been made. All right. The next thing I really want to recommend to your organization is you need to identify what those metrics are. And I'm going to share with you in just a minute. And then one of the things that really helped us was to pre-arrange and pre-identify crew positions. And I'll give you that hint in just a moment. But from there, once you've identified metrics and crew positions and prearranged positioning, then you train, you measure, and you repeat. That's going to be the key. So for example, the metrics, I'll share with you, as I did earlier, this DVDR acronym. It worked perfectly. Remember, when we developed this almost more than 15 years ago, we had to convince 4,000 providers that we needed to do something different. So I remember talking to my colleagues from Seattle, my 3 colleagues from Seattle Fire. We need to make this simple enough where they can remember it at 2 o'clock in the morning. Here's what we came up with. DVDR. D, the first one, stands for depth of compression. And as you know, for all us stateswide, it's 2 to 2.4. And for all you in the metric system, it's 50 to 60 or 5 and 6, depends on which one you want to use. The next one's V, or ventilation. Controlled ventilation. Somewhere between 350 to 500 mils is all you need to achieve initial chest rise in most adult in cardiac arrest. So controlled ventilation. Why? We've been overventilating and hyperventilating for decades. Everybody, we need to pull back from that. The next D is decompression or full recoil. It's not a request anymore. It's a requirement in our organization, complete chest recoil. Okay. And the last one is rate of compression. And I'm going to say something. I wonder if you're just like we are in our region of the United States. We're not as good as we think we are. Having that whatever music or whatever metronome in your head is one thing, but to have a real metronome is another. And I'll give an example in just a second. And the last part of high performance is high compression fractions. Now, certainly greater than 80, as recommended by most agencies, is fine, but I think we should push the bar even higher. I would like to see that a minimum of 90, if 30 to 2, and 95 if you're in continuous. But let's talk about rate again. Remember, you're not as good as you think you are. So I recommend a metronome. Every single cardiac arrest scenario, use a metronome. Take away the variable. And you can get that a number of different ways. You can get a metronome either on a smartphone, or you can use the one that's on your machine, which doesn't change you can't change it, but it's usually set around 100. But whatever you might use a metronome. All right. As I said before, identify crew positions. And in fact, we wanted to drill down far enough to actually get crew positions where they knew where to go. One of this is called the CPR triangle. Watch this. Every position coming with a piece of equipment is pre-arranged. So they all knew where they were already going to go. By doing this, additional personnel coming to the scene know exactly where they can go too. The bottom left of your screen has an open spot. Bottom right has an open spot. So if you practice this way, you already know how you can insert yourself into this case. The next one is body position. Go back to where you have trained yourself and look for every single thing that makes your performance perfect. Not good enough, perfect. So we shot videos to support that.
To perform chest compressions, position the hands in the center of the chest. Lock elbows. And keep arms straight over the patient in a perpendicular line. Compress to a minimum depth of at least 2 inches, but no more than 2.4 inches to avoid excessive compression depth. Allow full chest recoil to promote blood return to the heart and circulation to the lungs. Use a fulcrum motion to leverage weight. Compress at a rate of 100 to 120 compressions per minute.
Perfect. Perfect training, perfect compressions, not good enough. And the only way to get there in a real life is to practice the same way and get analytics to support that. The next thing we looked at with high performance is that we were overventilating. And I shared that with you. So we developed something called the 3-finger technique. Pulling that pinky finger off the bag takes away your crush factor. And we talked to a number of orthopedic surgeons about this. And believe it or not, it works. But whatever it takes to make sure we're not overventilating, I support. The Seattle program, for example, dropped to a 700cc bag. I'm not saying that's what everybody should do, but here's where I want to go. This is a training issue. So make overventilation an issue and then develop training to keep your team in check. Here's a quick video of the 3-finger technique, or as my colleagues in England or the UK call it, they call it the queen or the pinky out finger, the queen's technique. I just love how I can get a 300-pound truckman from Seattle with his pinky out. That was one of my favorite videos that we produced. All right, here we go. The last thing I want everyone to understand as we start to get toward the end of this is that high-performance CPR is a true team event. So what we did was we asked a team from the local Seattle area, 2 different agencies to work together. Come into a room, we're going to put a camera on you, we're going to put an instrumented mannequin, and we're going to watch your performance using analytics. And they all said, fine. Everybody, I want to show you their evolution. This is a team from North Shore Fire and Shoreline Fire, Washington, running a high-performance evolution with 5 providers. The folks in white are paramedics. That's what we wear in the Seattle King County system. The folks in blue are BLS EMTs. Here we go.
As additional EMS personnel become available, it's important to note that complete integration as a team is a hallmark of high performance, or HP-CPR. HP-CPR is defined as an expertly performed, choreographed out-of-hospital cardiac arrest response, consisting of highly skilled and measured individual and team performance. Here are a few things to remember. The BLS crew owns the CPR portion of the cardiac arrest scenario, and all advanced life support, or ALS, providers must be proficient in performing ALS skills without interrupting HP-CPR. Do not interrupt HP-CPR during the administration of ALS procedures. Rotate the compressor during the analysis of the cardiac rhythm. The ALS monitor should be pre-charged during the last 15 seconds of the cycle. The timekeeper maintains a written record of the event, crew rotations, and overall team choreography. Hallmarks of HP-CPR include fully integrated, choreographed, and expertly performed resuscitation, minimal pauses, compression depth of 2 to 2.4 inches, or 50 to 60 millimeters, complete recoil, and controlled ventilation of 350 to 500 milliliters per breath.
Excellent. That was a one-take evolution for them as well. And then the analytics we reviewed with them, and it was an awesome job. So what I want to share when we start to close is whether you're pre-hospital on the left or in hospital on the right, even though our environments are completely different, as you and I both know, the metrics for high performance are exactly the same. They're exactly the same. You just need to incorporate them into your environment. Work hard, everybody, to continue to build the program around a culture of excellence and high performance evolution. In closing, I want to share with you this. Increasing survival from cardiac arrest takes work. It's not easy, but it's not complicated. It takes work. It's not easy, but it's not complicated. Don't underestimate the value and culture of measure and improve. Identify strengths and gaps during training, which will help you develop a plan to validate and remediate. Develop mastery level individual skills, ideally through instrumented mannequins, giving the feedback, as well as the actual case events, and get the team involved in this, and then send those data back to those people that are performing the task. The last one, a piece of equipment, everybody, is just a tool. Performance is what counts. A piece of equipment is just a tool. Don't allow a piece of equipment to run your cardiac arrest evolution. Remember, if you're not measuring, you're not improving. We have to know how we're doing in order to know where we're going to go. One of my favorite quotes from a great colleague in Seattle, Dr. Mickey Eisenberg, where life is measured in years, but resuscitation in seconds or even minutes. Life is finite, where death is eternal. And between those 2 points, everybody, we only have about 10 minutes. And I'll share with you that those 10 minutes are yours. What you do with those, I hope, is a high performance evolution. Thank you for everything you do. What I'm hoping now is we have a lively Q&A session, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Take care, everybody.
Hi, Mike.
That was really fun.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike, and welcome to everyone. I am not David, as you can tell. So David is stuck in Wellington in a bit of a storm, so his internet is not the best, so I stepped in. I'm Mojca Bizjak-Mikic. I'm the general manager for CAA, and I'm very honored to be interviewing you, Mike, today for this Q&A panel. Thank you so much, first off, for a wonderful presentation. I have to say, I can't get enough of hearing about high performance CPR and just sort of all the incredible little nuances that King County and Seattle and then across the world people are coming up with just to do an extra little second to just really fine tune it, and it's incredible to see, like you've shared with us today, on how it makes a massive difference. And I think we all agree, and the 10 minutes go so fast, and sadly we're not even there for the first few of them. So what we do when we get on site is just absolutely critical. So thank you so much for that. I'm gonna open it up for questions here, but one from me, just really quickly. You talk about training, and then yes, measurement. What would you suggest for an ambulance service, but also for all our EMS colleagues? How often to train?
Sure. Well, that's a great question, right? If as educators, we would say the answer should be all the time, right? But the reality is that can't happen. So in the Seattle King County region, it is a requirement to have a quarterly evolution training. So all the teams come together, and at least once a quarter for a full evolution, which is a measured evolution, multi-team evolution, which is either 4 or 5. Those are then reviewed by an evaluator for compliance. And then you're recorded in a record recording that says you have it at least once a quarter. So to me, that's the minimum. Now, for some agencies may go, gosh, Mike, we only do it like once a year. So once a quarter may be a lot. For us, that's a minimum. And in fact, many agencies on their own will actually do it. Maybe they'll run a 10-minute evolution at the beginning of every set that they're on. For example, if they're on a 3-day set, they'll do it at the first part of the first shift of their 3-day. So every organization's a little different in Seattle King County. There are some that are like us that want to train all the time, but at a minimum, we train quarterly on a complete high performance evolution.
I think that's a wonderful standard to try and aim for.
It can be hard.
I'm hoping our services listening here are going, well, we might have to, look at that. And, we're all aware, obviously, time is definitely the factor,
Right.
but trying to aim towards that would be absolutely wonderful.
I will say this before you go on, because there are still some agencies that think that we can remember this like if we do it once every 2 years. The old certification time frame, right? Well, I got certified in ACLS 2 years ago. I will share with you, there's absolutely no way you will maintain a high level performance if you do it once every 2 years, even once a year. And I've shared that by being in the system for more than 40 years, just doing this over and over and over again. So I'll share that as much as they can, but there should at least be a minimum standard, because we lose skill quickly, right? That time has already been identified in many studies. Within 30 or 45 days or so, we're already starting to lose skill. So we want to keep that. Yep.
And I guess it's very different when you're talking high performance CPR and you're talking, I guess that the alternative, not high performance CPR, those skills will very much vary. And yes, for, CPR from a public member or whatnot, as long as they know what they're doing, they help massively. But when we come on scene, when EMS or ambulance comes on scene, you want that absolutely spot on. So big difference.
That's exactly right. Public access, we're happy. Chest compressions only is really the standard now, right? Just get on the chest and do it. But you're right. When a professional team arrives, we should have high expectations of performance.
Yeah.
So thanks for asking.
And I guess that's what the public expects of us as well. Anyway.
Yeah, sure they do. They do. You're right.
Yeah, wonderful. A few questions from the audience. What are your thoughts on head first CPR? So crews doing compressions from the head versus from the side?
That's interesting. I'm seeing this as well for the first time. I frankly have never really seen nor done sort of head first. I thought the question was going to be about heads up CPR, sort of this new idea and study that's going on. But they're literally talking about going toward the head and doing over the top of the head and down. Yeah. Well, my question would be, I'm assuming that then the ventilator is positioned off to the side. Is this a single ventilator, or do you require a two-person ventilator if you're prior to an advanced airway? As you know, the Heart Association recommends a two-person ventilation technique using a bag valve mask. The reality is, let's be honest, not everybody has that much personnel to often do that. So my experience is I have no experience with this. So I can't, I would love to see it. If this person would love to follow up with me, if they've got some videos, send it my way. I don't want this to be a one-time shot for us. I want to stay connected. So with that particular scenario, we definitely do it exactly how I showed in the video, which is a single person at the head. Remember that triangle, everybody, that I showed. That triangle is what allows additional personnel coming into the scene to know where they can go before they ever get there. As soon as they come in, they can see that opportunity. And the top of the triangle, the apex, of course, is the ventilator. So we do compressions currently from the side. So that's an interesting question. Have that person follow up with me, please.
Good question. And obviously it's, around the world, mechanical compression.
Yes.
Where are your thoughts on that one? There's in Australia and New Zealand, this is being definitely rolled out.
Certainly that's a two-part question. I'm seeing the same one that you're seeing, and that is, should we prioritize using a Lucas or a compression device as opposed to should we use one at all? So first I'll answer, because everybody asks us here in the Seattle-King County, do we use them as a primary method by which to do chest compressions? And the answer is no, we do not. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. It's not just black and white, by the way. We have the ability to put a lot of personnel at location on a cardiac arrest. And in fact, you know that there are studies that support at a certain number of personnel, anyway, I think it's 6 or 7 at scene, there is a connection with an increase in survival. A lot of that simply because of personnel. But to the other side of that is I believe that there is an opportunity for an assist device, like a chest compression assist device, for those agencies that either don't have a lot of personnel at the scene, have long either required transport times, or, for example, aero-rotor helicopter services. If they rearrest in a helicopter, doing CPR is extremely difficult. So our recommendation is we don't use this as a primary tool. And in fact, the current AHA guidelines, I'm sure that, or at least the European guidelines suggest that it's still a 2B as far as the recommendation. There's still not a lot of clear-cut evidence to suggest that early on is still an increase in survival to discharge numbers. I will say this, regardless of which device you use, whether it is a band supporting or a compression device, Stryker versus like Zoll, you must train in the application of the device. You can't just put it on a rig and expect that it's going to be an easy application, because it's not. That pause on some of the providers that they'll put on is an egregious pause. And don't miss my talk about pauses. Pauses count, right? Some of the worst, some of the data really suggest it's those 15, 20, 25-second pauses, which may be the biggest culprit to determine outcomes from cardiac arrest. So if you've got a device, I think that that's something your organization uses, you must practice with it. It takes energy, and you can't just put it on the rig, do it once a year and expect it to be a clean evolution. So I hope that answers the question. I believe there's an absolute place for this, but we don't use it as a primary tool in our organization.
I agree. It's definitely sort of that. It's not, necessarily a primary tool, but having it in certain circumstances, especially countries when we might not have as many staff as you can dedicate to cardiac arrest, or when we're talking rural, and Australia obviously has a massive vast country.
Yes.
Then definitely good opportunity to take those. And I agree, using that in your stock standard training, so the staff really know what they're doing about that. Wonderful. A few more questions we've got. Really on the matrix, what would you recommend? And I know you've gone through that one, but it's really, he's talking, the specifics more than just those generalized observations. What are the matrix that you go, these are definitely the ones that you need to look out for, train with, and obviously then capture back from events?
Yes, so it's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Now remember, we still measure those metrics during training analytics as well. And in fact, we use the Laerdal Q-CPR mannequin with the SimPad. I'll be honest with you, I gave you my disclosure. I have no financial gain with the company, but I will tell you that product is what brought us out and put us at a high level using that product, because we were able to measure depth. We were able to measure recoil. We measured timing. We measured ventilation volume, and that was one of the things that we really identified. When the mannequins would come from manufacturer, they were set at 400 to 700 mils, which was too much for us. So we were able to re-gauge that in the settings, and that retaught our 4,000 providers how to use between 350 to 500. That Laerdal product, the Q-CPR mannequin, was our go-to machine. So as you know, I'm sure most people, if you're using post-analytic real-time cases, you're not going to get ventilation volume from that. You'll get ventilation timing. So you've got to practice on where to get that volume, unless you have some means in either a add-on device, which there are some of those coming around the product, or through the electrodes that'll get that. But we specifically identify depth, recoil, rate of compressions, rate of timing of ventilations. Absolutely, we look at compression fraction, specifically break that down to pre-shock pause and post-shock pause, which you all know is collectively called an aggregate, the peri-shock pause. Those are the specifics we're looking at. And the last part, don't forget, we listen to every word that's said. So we have an audio tracing. We hear every word that you say on the case. And also, again, some people might be raising an eyebrow, but that's important to us. It helps glue the call together. So those are those specific. They're all then reviewed, and all of those data go right back to the providers that actually ran the case, so they can look at their benchmarks and see if they hit the King County benchmarks that we ask them, or do we need some more remediation. Jed, I hope that helps.
So you've got a system in place to obviously then listen to all the recordings, review the event itself, and then you feed back to the providers. So that's straight away done?
That's correct. That's correct. Because we really believe, acquiring data is just the acquisition of data. It's what you do with it is what really comes into play. So once we get those data points from every cardiac arrest, we then review it for compliance, annotate it, make sure it's HIPAA compliant in the US. I'm not sure if you down there in Australia, New Zealand, or Papua New Guinea have HIPAA, but we do. We want to make sure there's no names of the thing. Anyway, and then we send it back to the providers. And sometimes it's even done within 24 hours in some agencies. Before they get off shift, they know how their performance was, and certainly they know what the outcome of the patient.
That is wonderful. And I know a couple of services here that will be very, very jealous of that wonderful feedback. Look, we are just about to finish off. One last question. How did you go about, and it might be sort of either now or previous years on that, getting everyone else on board with high performance CPR? So obviously ambulance services is one thing. How do you then go about, and do you have some sort of feedback or some, from your experience, the fire departments, are you working with maybe police? What are all the organizations that you're hoping to target and get them to start understanding high performance CPR and the team, all of that?
So I'll make this a two-part answer, and I'll do the best I can. So the first thing, when we identified that the science is really starting to point some clear directions about 10, 15 years ago, and I would recommend this to all of the organizations out there, you must have strong medical control, strong medical oversight. Those physicians or whoever is that medical director that understands the need to operationalize the current science. Then you couple that with mastery level instructors within the organization, but yet still get the buy-in from the providers. So what I'm trying to show on camera is there's got to be a top-down and a bottom-up connection. It can't be one group pointing at the other and say, do a better job. It can't work that way. It has to be medical directors or whoever is your medical direction offering good leadership, the team and the trainers providing the education and the performance. And then once the performance starts coming back to those providers, they understand the value of this new job. We had to train 4,000 in our program. That's just in Seattle, King County. That's not the United States. That's just our program. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard either. Once we convinced them we can do a better job and gave them ownership, they took it from there. Now, the last part of the question is, how do we then incorporate others to be a part of it? Police officers. How do we get them involved? It's the same thing. We have to train, we have to acknowledge, we have to incorporate their organization, their leadership, and let them know that we believe you can be a part of life-saving cardiac arrest. The public, we've been doing public training for CPR for decades. And I'll be honest with all my colleagues out there, one of the first things you should be looking at to increase survival in your community is to have those dispatchers or telecommunicators trained to do telephone-assisted CPR. So they're the first responders, if you will, and then get the citizens involved with it too. If the citizens can put hands on the chest prior to your ambulance crew arriving, chance of success, rockets, go straight up.
One last question, and I think then we're gonna have to let you go. Some pointers in when you have to move the patient.
Yeah.
How do you sort of maintain that high performance?
Yeah, I'm reading the same question, and I'm going to read this with the idea that we need to put them from the scene into the back of a rig or an ambulance, right? Well, certainly, the first thing is the culture. We don't transport patients that still need CPR. We run a cardiac arrest at location until we generate ROSC, pulses. And we only move once we have ROSC. Now that said, can they reoffend in the back of the rig? They can. Now I understand that not everybody's like that. I understand that. So here's what I would suggest for those agencies that are required. If they're so far out and maybe the medical direction says, we need you to bring them into the hospital or whatever, this is where those CPR assist devices can really come in handy, right? You can apply the assist device, the chest compression assist device, put them on a backboard, put them on a gurney, and you can continue compressions down a hallway, down a stairwell. But I'll tell you, but remember, where we're from, we don't transport CPR in progress patients. We run the codes at the scene until we establish ROSC. And if we don't, then we'll call in and we'll make sure we have agreement, and then we will end the resuscitation in the field.
Thank you so much for your time. The presentation was wonderful, and like I said, it's so incredible and so inspiring seeing the work that you are doing. And you could have ended or stopped years back and when we're doing an awesome job, but I love that you keep on just chipping away. And what else? Like, what's the extra few seconds or that? So I think that's inspirational and wonderful guidance from you for the rest of us. So thank you on that one. I'll say goodbye to you for now, and have a lovely Christmas and happy holidays.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll say that if anybody wants to get a hold of me out there, I'm not sure how they can connect through you guys, but I'm available. If you want to get a hold of me, send me an email, send me connect, and we will chat more.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, anybody that wants to connect, just contact us directly, and then we will get you in touch. Thank you so much, Mike. Perfect.
Love you.
Bye. To everyone else, thank you so much for continuing to join the CAA webinars. We are going to take a little break in January, and we are going to be back in February. We've got an exciting plan for next year. So from February through to December, we'll be back with our monthly webinars on various topics, everything from women in leadership, clinical, sustainability, patient safety, you name it. We will be looking after that. Don't forget to jump on our website once those programs and webinars are available in bios and abstracts. They will be up and running, and you can continue to register. And also CPD points are still available, so just email us with those ones. Thank you again for joining us this year and supporting the webinars. Have a lovely Christmas and happy holidays, and goodbye for now from all of us here at Team CAA. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for High Performance CPR and Insider's Story, presented by Mike Helbock and proudly supported by Liedl. We're taking a break. We'll be back with more webinars in the new year starting the 22nd of February. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on social media, Twitter at CAA Australasia, Facebook and LinkedIn, the Council of Ambulance Authorities Australasia. Thanks for joining us in 2021, and we look forward to seeing you again in the new year.